Twin 61 Power Plus from BBK. Let's get it on this old truck, shall we?
You said it. You said it.
Thanks for checking out Fox Boss 9, and we're working on the old Ford again. If you guys have just tuned in for this, I've done quite a few other modifications on this truck, and I've pretty much documented all of them. Let's go over some of the stuff real quick. And the reason that I want to go over some of the modifications before we get into this throttle body is because you're not just going to take and put that throttle body on a stock truck and see immediate results. This is one of those things that you have to do other things in conjunction with to help open up the engine and its ability to make horsepower. Now in this case, I have a aftermarket ignition system, and I have an adjustable fuel pressure regulator. Of course, the coil that's a little bit better than stock, that's with the aftermarket ignition. I have 8.5 millimeter plug wires from MSD. I have some plugs that are opened up a little bit. I opened up the gap a little bit. One of the bigger changes that I've made on this is I have the Banks exhaust system on this, the power system. I think they call it the Power Banks. I can't remember, but basically what this is no smog pump and no catalytic converters, and I have the stainless tubular long tube headers that goes down into a Y pipe, and then back the exhaust system, of course, to a Flowmaster cat back system. So I've got this engine opened up for breathing. Now I've been running a K&N filter in my box for a while. Not only that, but I have drilled out the box in multiple locations to help with getting some sort of air through here. Again, you can't add more airflow and expect a restrictive point like your factory air box to flow the kind of air that the new component's going to offer. So basically what I want you to look at here is the installation and pretty much how straightforward it is. The truck has 183,000 miles, and we tow our RV with it. The RV, whenever it's loaded, weighs about 5,500 pounds, maybe closer to 6,000 pounds. And as far as the truck, when we travel, it's loaded down. We put a lot of stuff in the back of the truck, but not crazy. I stay under my GCVW, and as far as when we're out and we're actually traveling, the truck and trailer combination together weighs right around 14,000 pounds with all the occupants and all the stuff that we're traveling with. The other thing that I did was upgrade the injectors. I'm sorry, I neglected to tell you that. I did upgrade the injectors to a better matched set, and they do offer a little bit better flow. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're still 24 pound, they might be 26 pound injectors. Again, that's something that you just can't bolt onto your truck without these other components to get any kind of recognition as far as power. It's just not going to happen. I remember, because of my age, I loved the Bionic Man. I thought that was a great TV show when I was a kid growing up, but my dad, who was a realist and also a millwright, he says the Bionic Man can't be real. I said, how come? He says, you just can't put an arm on a body that can lift 2,000 pounds and expect that the guy's back is going to be able to support it. And it's the same with the truck. You can't bolt on any one component and expect it to do everything that it's supposed to without other supporting components. So that's what I've done with this, and we're going to go ahead and install this throttle body. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do, obviously, is take off these hoses, or get them at least out of the way. Now remember that I made that modification to where I cut these air horns off that are inside. It did add a little bit extra, and it's nice that I don't have to worry about that restriction anymore. If you're not going to be changing your air box, which I highly recommend you do something over there with this increased airflow, the only thing you have to disconnect are these two here to get them out of the way. You don't have to do anything else other than that right there. Just kind of move this out of the way. to get to all the bolts that you need to. But in my case, I'm going to go ahead and remove this over here also to get it out of the way. All right, so once that's off, you're pretty much looking at everything that you need to remove, and it's going to require a flat tip screwdriver, and in my case I'm going to use a 1/2 inch wrench for the bolts, but I believe the bolts are probably metric. What the screwdriver's for is to remove the throttle linkage and the transmission linkage. It just pops off. Keep this lubricated. It's a good idea to keep that lubricated. The other thing that you need this for is to remove the tab, or to help pull this off of the throttle position sensor. In my case, that little clip on one side is broke, but the other side's still good. Now all you're left with is the throttle body itself, and that's just held on with those 4 bolts. Like I said, I'm going to use a 1/2 inch wrench and a 1/2 inch socket to remove these bolts. The new kit, which I'll show you, comes with bolts and also comes with a gasket and some washers. Now with the bolts loose, which don't take hardly anything to remove them, you can see it just falls off. It may stick a little bit. If it does, just tap it. Now, even though this gasket looks pretty darn good, I need to replace it. I mean, it's the right thing to do. And as far as the old throttle body and the way that it compares to the new one, let's go ahead and set them up side by side so you can see what that looks like. Yeah, there's definitely a size difference. I don't know how much is translating on the camera, but let's see if I can find something that'll fit into both of them so you can get an idea of how much bigger it is. All right, so instead of trying to find something that fits in there, let's just go ahead and use a tape measure. You can see whenever I put it on edge here, let's try to get a decent reading. Even though I have a caliper in there, I'd rather not get that out. We're about 2 3/8 of an inch across, and if we do that to this throttle body, we're at about 2 and just under a quarter from what I can tell. It's not quite an eighth, so they're definitely bigger. They're also spread out a little bit further as far as, you know, the comparison here. They're a little bit closer, and it's because of the increased diameter. So other than that, overall the features are pretty much the same, everything. Okay, so I was getting ready to bolt this thing on, and I ran into a problem. I want to make sure this is full disclosure, because these are the kinds of things that you do have to look out for, and in my case I didn't really check because I didn't think it was going to be an issue. However, when I bolted this throttle body on, I ran into a problem. This is the front of the throttle body, of course this is the back, and you can see this is pretty close to being all the way forward. Well, you can see what they shipped me. They shipped me one with the linkage all the way in the back. Now I thought, oh, maybe I just need to flip this around or turn it upside down. I didn't mess with it because everything that I've seen on here, I mean, I've got pretty good spatial relations recognition, and I can't think of a way that I could flip this and make it work. Alright guys, there goes UPS, so you know what that means. I got my part. Yeah. So here's the difference between the two. This is the one that I had before, prior, and I bolted it on, and there's just no way it was going to work. And here's the one that is correct. You can see, look how far this ball is. Not only that, but see, this is why I knew I couldn't flip this around or do anything and make a difference there. It's just too different. I don't know what this is from, but this linkage here came off of something else. So the first thing you need to do before you bolt it up to the plenum there is mount your throttle position sensor. Now it faces to the front, and you can kind of see there's a couple of little tangs inside there. Of course this blade fits inside there, and it's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's not a lot that can go wrong here. However, I want you to be aware that, see this throttle position sensor and how much shoulder is built in there? That's so it sits down in this recess area. Don't be confused by this ring right here. This ring is not to be used. It's a spacer. Now if you have a throttle position sensor that is flat and it is not raised in this area, then by all means use this bushing. But the thing is I talked with the tech department at BBK, and they said that the kit that comes with this, which is nothing more than 4 bolts, 4 washers, and this bushing, is for different models of throttle bodies that may require this, and it's just cheaper for them to throw this in all of the same kit, keep one kit in stock, and then if you need it, you use it. If you don't, you don't. And in this case, I don't. So again, pretty straightforward. This just goes on to the throttle body, just like the old one was. Then you line up the holes and put a couple screws in. There's a little bit of tension that you'll feel there. Don't worry about that. And then when you tighten the screws, don't over tighten them. You don't need to. Just enough to keep it to where it's not going to move, which really the only way it can move is out. So let me go ahead and do that, and then we'll position it up on the plenum and get it bolted down. Now, as far as putting this gasket on, there's no top or bottom. You can put it any way you want. Words out, words in. It doesn't make a difference. And as far as if you want to put some sort of a sealer on here, I don't think that there's really any need, but if you want to do it to help hold it in place so you can get your bolts started, you can do that. You know, use a little bit of that Indian head shellac or whatever you want to call it, or some gasket maker, but you don't have to put hardly any on there. Just put enough that it will hold the gasket, which may be just a couple of dots in a couple places. I do want to show you the bolts though, and they're hex head, and the reason they're hex head is because the throttle body now at this point, it's so big that a bolt, the head of the bolt wouldn't even clear like this boss for the mounting of the throttle position sensor. So they give you these hex heads, that way you can tighten them down. Now, as far as the size that's needed, I'm not sure. I grabbed a T40 that I have, which is a Torx fitting, which will work. And it's just because I have long Torx fittings that work better than my long Allen heads. So basically all we're gonna do at this point is just get it started and snug it down. So again, we're just gonna get this started. And grab my tool here and just give it a couple little bumps. There we go. And now put the next one in. Those two are set. We'll go ahead and get the other two lined up. And once we get those lined up, we'll make sure that the linkage is moving freely all the way around. I'll just start this one with my finger since it's kind of convenient there. Yeah, I got a few threads on there, so let me go ahead and put the tool on it. We'll try to run it in a little bit here. So I got that one started for the most part, and go ahead and get the one across from it. And again, check the linkage, make sure it moves freely. I want to line this up as best I can with the ports. By the way, guys, loud exhaust don't mean performance exhaust. Fix your exhaust. I don't know why people think that just because their car's loud, it's fast. Again, you don't have to He-Man these too much. I'm probably over-torquing them a little bit with this little wrench, but at this point, check to make sure everything moves freely. That's all good. As far as the linkage, it just snaps back in place here. Just like that. Good fit. Everything looks real good. It's got a little bit of movement in and out, but nothing crazy. Of course, I'm going to plug in my throttle position sensor because the car has to know where the throttle is. And pretty good shape there. Okay, so right now as it stands, I can run this if I want. You know, your air is coming in here. The only reason there's a tube to it is so it's pulling in filtered air. But as far as just starting it, I can run this without a filter. So what I'm going to do is start the truck, let it learn its speed, the air that's coming in, all that stuff with this new throttle body. And then once the truck's warm, I'll shut it off. I'll unplug this, and then I'll start it back up again, and then I'll set the idle to where it needs to be. All right, so I got the truck to run. I tried to set the idle, and everything seemed okay, and I decided I was going to take it for a test drive. Went up the street, it wouldn't shift. It had to be manually shifted the second, And even then it wouldn't shift to third, and it was free revving, and it was doing all kinds of weird stuff. Came back to the house, babied it back to the house. I wasn't very far. Screwed around with it a little bit, came back out, tried to start it, and it wouldn't start again. So today I'm changing the throttle position sensor. Now this is something that you got to be aware of. Even though you think you're just going to be bolting on a part and everything will be fine and dandy, it doesn't always go as planned. There's a lot of things that could happen, but you got to keep focused and remember the reason that you have a problem is because of the repair that you made. That's why I think it's important to make one modification or one repair at a time, not to do a whole bunch of them, because you've got 20 different directions you can go with trying to fix something. So I got just a BWD throttle position sensor. I'm going to go ahead and bolt that on. Hopefully that'll take care of the problem. I did check all my vacuum lines and everything. That's something I wanted to talk about too, that you need to be aware of. When you're working on this truck, you know, you're leaning on stuff, you're leaning over stuff. There's a lot of things that could go on. And over the years, these plastic lines have gotten really brittle, and you can see that I've got them all patched up with some hard vacuum line. This line will not collapse. It happens to be see-through, but all these repairs have been made over the years because I've leaned on stuff and you know, it happens. It just happens. So be aware that whenever you're messing with something back here, you know, you could have a wiring issue because of something you touched. But in my case, I'm going to go ahead and replace the throttle position sensor with the new one, and again, hopefully that'll take care of it. So the truck started up and it stalled, and then it started up again when I cranked it again, obviously, and it hesitated a little bit, but then it leveled right out. So I must have definitely screwed up the throttle position sensor just by taking it off and putting it on. Now this truck does have 183,000 miles, so it shouldn't be surprising that, you know, components are going to fail. Now there's a chance that that throttle position sensor has been changed in the past. However, if it has been, it was changed by Ford. It was a Ford part, so there's a chance that it was either replaced by Ford or it was original. And throttle position sensors don't normally go bad, so there's a chance that could have been original. So basically what I'm doing now is, again, doing the same thing I did before, and that's let the truck get to full running temperature. I'm going to unplug the idle air control valve. This time I will shut off the truck though, and try to restart it. Let's see if it can learn, you know, what it's doing without the idle air control valve, and then I'll screw around with the idle adjustment and try to get it close to where I want it to be, and again, take it for a drive. Well, I've been driving this for a little while now, and when I say a little while, I mean just maybe an hour, and everything seems to be a lot smoother. Now the truck ran pretty smooth already, but I can tell it's just a step above. I still think that it's learning, especially on full throttle, because you know, there's power there, but I don't see significant power, you know, gains. So I know that right now it's probably trying to figure out how much fuel it can get away with dumping in here, but very smooth. That's the best thing that I can find about this. Here we go. Go. I blew the horn a couple times by accident, but I was trying to keep you steady. So it's been a few days and I've been driving with this, well, actually it's probably been a week and a half, and I've been driving with the truck with this throttle body installed. The temperature's gotten a little bit cooler, and other than one time it had a flaky stall situation, no issues. Like I said, that throttle position sensor, that just happened to go bad, and that was it. The thing you have to remember about modifications to a vehicle is that the engineers have done a really good job from the factory for the engine and drivetrain and everything else to work in harmony and last a long time. However, there's always some deficiencies. That's where the performance products come in. And there's some things that you're going to add that are just going to be great all the way around. If you add, for example, exhaust headers, that's going to be something that's going to be a great addition. It's going to just be better all the way around, as long as you get good exhaust headers, like I have Banks on here, which are incredible. But for the most part, a lot of these modifications are Band-Aids. Now, obviously, everybody knows how a Band-Aid works. A Band-Aid is something that you put on your body whenever you have a cut or a deficiency, basically, in your being. So if I get a cut or abrasion on my hand and I put a Band-Aid on there, that first Band-Aid is going to make a pretty big difference. It's going to help out quite a bit. However, if I put another Band-Aid over top of that first one, is it really going to make that much difference? Probably not. And that's basically what happens. Is the vehicle has, you know, problems. It has issues from the factory, and once you install, for example, headers on there, that's the first Band-Aid. That one's going to help a considerable amount with the breathing of the engine. So now that I'm adding this throttle body, it's another Band-Aid, but it's not going to make as big a difference necessarily as it would if it was installed originally with nothing else changed. You would notice it more. However, they all are working together, so it can't hurt now that I have good exhaust flow coming out of the engine to do everything I can to add intake air going into the engine. Sometimes the things do, you know, a really good job. Sometimes they make huge differences, and then other times not so much. I mean, that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, you're not going to always have one adder that just is crazy horsepower, unless you're talking about nitrous or supercharger or turbos or something like that. And even then, have you guys really added nitrous to a vehicle before? I had somebody tell me once what nitrous really was and what it was really like. And once I bought a nitrous system, he was dead on with his comparison. And this is only going to really pertain to you guys that are older guys that have had carbureted engines. Have you ever had a car that had a 4-barrel carburetor and you got it tuned up just right where, you know, the 4 barrels kick in right at the right time, and it gives you a good amount of power? I mean, it just feels right. You could feel it coming on, and it's strong. Well, somebody told me that adding nitrous to a vehicle would be just like adding another 4-barrel to it. Something that would kick in and pull just like that original 4-barrel that you added the first time, maybe over a 2-barrel. And that was so true. I mean, nitrous really feels like something is just pulling. It isn't that Mel Gibson Mad Max flip the switch, you know, the blower kicks on and all of a sudden tires are squealing and all that stuff. Nothing like that. Nothing like Fast and the Furious. So whenever you add anything like this throttle body for horsepower, you're going to feel a difference. You're going to feel that there's something going on there. You're going to feel it, you know, maybe be a little smoother. You might feel it in a certain range. You might feel, you know, from takeoff it's a little bit more responsive, or whenever the transmission kicks down, you might feel that it's got a little bit more power. You might feel that it covers a better range in the RPM that used to be deficient. And that's kind of what's going on with the throttle body. It's smoother. I find that it's more responsive. I do feel a little bit throughout the RPM range. And the thing is I only plan on doing some more modifications to the engine. So the fact that I have something that's flowing a decent amount of air is not going to hurt my cause whatsoever, trying to get more power out of this. So with that said, the video's over with at this point. Click the link down below in the description if you want to purchase this. That would help support this channel for me to put out more videos just like this. It's going to take you directly to Amazon and a link for the product. And as far as just bolting it onto a stock engine, I wouldn't do it. You definitely want to add headers. Now, if you have an exhaust system, maybe a catback system, or you've done something like me and removed your catalytic converter and done a catback system, or where the catalytic converter used to be, that might be okay. but definitely exhaust headers is going to help. Again, go to my video on that where I installed these Banks headers over the Hedman headers. If you go right to Banks, spend the extra money, and just skip the Hedmans altogether, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. That's it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you like it, click like or subscribe, and click the link down below for subscribing. And if you want notifications every single time that I put up a video, make sure that you click the bell. There's a bell down below that will make sure that YouTube don't decide when you get notified. You'll just get notified every time. Thanks a lot. Bye.